your mother. It's time for another episode of Birds with Friends. Just some high-flying wren, fast vertical stems, and professors from Penn watching eagles eating prey like Pazookies on birthdays. It's Philadelphia, Marissa, Bo, and Zach kicking it. Cooler than 3 penguins till Zach runs off with his valet keys. He's a real nuanced goose. Pull up a branch, get loose. It's time for some juice on some Birds with Friends. The early bird gets the worm, but prefers getting turned like a turn on some Birds with Friends. Marissa, Bo, and Zach are here to squawk. Don't miss the mistress talk on some.
I don't call it the off season. I call it the non-playing season.
Is that what you say when people, normies ask you about what you do in the off season? You say it's not the off season, it's the non-playing season.
I don't correct them, but I'll call it the non-playing season.
Okay.
I'll feel like there's the playing season.
The NPO.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Birds with Friends. Saturday night, 9:38 p.m. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman, Marissa Dunn, here to talk about another eventful day for the Eagles as they close out the 2023 draft with a quarterback, another defensive tackle, a trade for another Georgia player, and the most Zach Berman move they could have possibly made. We'll get to all of that, but first we got to know, Marissa, how are you?
I am doing great. I told you, Bo, I'm sitting on a little pregnancy ball over. I mean, I guess it's just like a workout ball, which is way more comfortable than my chair. So I'm in for a long pod. I could be here all night. This is much more comfortable than the past 2 nights, so I'm ready.
Not good news for Zach because you say that and you give me an inch and I'll take your night. So,
yes.
Zach
slept like 3 hours.
How many hours of sleep are we talking, ZB?
Last night, 4.5.
Oh, that's a veritable Rip Van Winkle for you.
So you slept 7 hours all week, and
but you know what? I feel for. I was thinking about Dane on my drive home in the sense that the end of the draft, it comes and it's like you've spent the past few months thinking about this and planning for this and going through all these different scenarios, and then it's just finished. It's almost like the end of the season, and this is what Dane's been working for a year. So I can only imagine
mother.
Oh,
excuse me. Oh my gosh!
2 minutes and 39 seconds in. Wow, I gotta put.
I was gonna say mother effers act like they forgot about Dane, but I slipped. I pulled a Zach. I'm sorry. I hope. We're gonna need to put in the audio version. I will add a content alert for young children,
or I could add a
just to let them know. we got to keep our youngsters happy. This is tough.
Yeah, Monday from Dane is one of my favorite columns of the year. The way too early. I hope it's Monday, or it might be later on. But the way too early 2024 mock draft. Because I'm looking forward to seeing, Caleb Williams and Drake May and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Olu Fashanu. Am I pronouncing it correctly? The left tackle from Penn State and Dallas Turner from Alabama. I mean, next year's gonna be a good draft. But let's get into the Eagles draft.
I mean, Caleb Williams. What are you gonna do? It's too good. All right. Now, before we get to the draft, lots of things to talk about, and obviously the trade for DeAndre Swift, which we will get to. We'll have our thoughts on talking to Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni at the end of the proceedings today. I realized that we never talked about the Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith press conferences from yesterday. We can talk about those as well, Zach. But you walked into the media house today, and you let me know that
we're starting with this.
You were actually a little bit upset with me, and Marissa said she's been hearing about this all day long.
This is really what we're starting with. I simply said that I was running to the press conference yesterday, made a 20-second decision to use the men's or to use the bathroom very quickly. Didn't touch anything in the room, right? I went to the bathroom and came out, and I didn't expect my draft weekend to be getting text messages about you bringing up bathroom habits here. But honestly, Bo,
I'm sorry you feel that way.
I was so excited for this podcast.
We did hear from a sponsor. and Athletic Greens decided they wanted to, promote a new segment. And so, Marissa, roll the tape. We have the bathroom video from today of Zach going to the bathroom.
Bo, seriously.
We do not.
Okay.
Marissa, what was it? You heard from people all over.
No, I just saw a bunch of tweets that they loved the end of the pod. Zach
just left.
Zach has exited the stream.
He couldn't take it anymore.
Or maybe he had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
He's
that's
back.
on the table too. He's back.
Zach, did you have
was
to go
that
to the
on a
bathroom?
protest, Zach?
No, the video was out of sync, and it was hard for me to know when you were talking. So I jumped out and jumped back in.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the moves the Eagles made today. I think before we even get to the draft picks, and even though it chronologically happened first, the trade for Kelee Ringo, let's talk about DeAndre Swift.
Sure.
Because I know that this is a Zach dream come true. This hits like it's a full Zach bingo card, everything that you could hope for. So I want to give you the ball.
So what's everything? I'm curious what the bingo card
includes.
includes.
It's a Philly guy. It's a guy with draft pedigree.
Okay.
It's a thing that you've predicted.
Yeah.
So it's like, you might as well take your parade here and wear your crown and scepter and let us know what you think.
So anyone with a casual interest in Philadelphia high school sports has known about DeAndre Swift for going on to a decade now, basically. He was an awesome high school player, right? When you watched him, like if you go back and look at his clips from St. Joe's Prep, you could say this guy's going to play in the NFL. And the Eagles knew him back then too. DeAndre Swift goes to Georgia. Coincidence? That one's actually a coincidence. They didn't trade for him because he went to Georgia. But he went to that football factory that's in Georgia. Second round pick with the Lions. And honestly, I would say he's underachieved in Detroit relative to draft position. He's had these flashes, but he hasn't been consistent. He's been he's had injuries in his career.
But never big injuries. He's never played fewer than 13 games in his 3 seasons.
But he's been like in and out, and then he's had carries managed while he's recovered. He hasn't been the player that was expected in Detroit when I think it was the 35th overall pick. And then Detroit reconfigures their running back room this offseason. They pay David Montgomery. When they paid David Montgomery, that's when I said the Eagles should call Detroit about Swift, because I liked Swift more than the free agent running backs that were available entering the last year of his deal. He was cheap, right? Or inexpensive, I should say. So I thought that could be a decent possibility for the Eagles if they went that route, but it requires draft capital, obviously. And then when the Lions, when they drafted Gibbs at 12, it was fairly obvious that Swift was going to be moved. And at that point, I wanted to see what the Eagles were going to do on night 2, right? Maybe they would draft a running back late second round, third round. When they didn't do that, and this is why I mentioned the name in last night's pod, or frankly, this morning's pod, I thought Swift was heads and shoulders better than anyone they would have drafted today. And you obviously don't get him on a 4-year deal, but if you're simply looking
final year of his rookie deal, yeah,
exactly. If you're looking at it from like 2023 and all that Bijan Robinson talk, which we agree the Eagles weren't going to do that at 10, but those who wanted Bijan Robinson, their justification was you're a Super Bowl contender. Get the guy who can help you right now, right? So if you're only thinking about this season, DeAndre Swift can help you this season. I think he's going to be atop the depth chart. He's inexpensive. He's young. He can, it's not all on him. I mean, if Rashad Penny stays healthy, he's intriguing as we've talked about. They have Gainwell back. So he kind of fits into that group there. And I thought it was a good trade. They gave up a 2025 4th round pick. So 2 drafts away now.
Right.
And then
they swap. Pick swap.
Yeah. In a 7th round pick swap. I thought it was a good move. The Eagles know him. Dom DeSandro, the security chief, knows Swift and the family. The Eagles have people in the building who have seen this guy since he was a teenager. He's been, I make the joke whenever the Eagles, it's actually not a joke. I use the line whenever the Eagles add someone who's a Philadelphia native or Philadelphia area native, that he doesn't need his phone or Google Maps to figure out, or Waze, whatever system you use, to figure out how to get to work. Well, Swift has been in this building, right? He knows, he'll know how to get to the NovaCare complex. So really like the trade, and think that trade could have a material effect on their offense in 2023, because I think his best football is still ahead of him.
So if I'm going to play devil's advocate,
as you're wont to do.
Well, okay,
yes.
let's just go through it. I mean, he was now let's stipulate that he was drafted by a previous regime in Detroit, but this is a player who was a second-round pick, 35th overall, very top of the second round, and has been a disappointment and has lost his job essentially.
Yes, fair.
Every season. Basically every season he has been outplayed in the minds of the coaches of the teams he's playing for. Last year, Jamal Williams overtakes him. This year, they have him on the roster. Jamal Williams leaves. They go sign David Montgomery, and obviously, as you said, draft Jahmyr Gibbs at 12th overall. He's never topped 617 rushing yards. He's been a little bit more productive as a receiver, but he's never, he's had he's topped 1,000 yards from scrimmage once in his 3 seasons.
Yeah.
It's not a nothing price. It's a future price. It's a 2024 fifth. That's and the Eagles will tell you, through their national media friends, that the odds are if he has a good year, he's going to leave. They're going to get a comp pick back. We'll see how that all plays out, but it's a bet that I think is worth making. We expected that they would lean on. We saw what he did in week 1 against us when he had that great game, and they did. That both Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman mentioned that. I think it's a probably a smart piece of business. This offense, we can go. We can repeat ourselves again and say it's the most running back friendly offense in the league. A guy who I think is dangerous at the second level. Maybe gives you a little bit more explosive juice. I just think that if you did draft a running back in the 5th round or something like that, and you hit on that guy, you would be getting more you'd be getting more value out of that than you're getting out of 1 year of DeAndre Swift, probably. And I think it's a good trade. I don't think it's it's not even as surefire a thing of like a midseason trade for Jay Ajayi. Like this guy hasn't really proven it at the NFL level. I think if everybody in the Eagles backfield is healthy, which is a huge if, like Rashad Penny is a better running back than DeAndre Swift is right now. I just think I think if you were placing odds on who's going to lead the Eagles in rushing, it probably is DeAndre Swift, because Rashad Penny didn't get a lot of money and he doesn't stay healthy. I think it's a fine move. I think it's a good piece of business for a team with Super Bowl aspirations, and he is more reliable of a bet than if you were drafting a running back in the 5th round. But I just don't think it's like oh wow, how he stole one again. Like the entire league knew that he was available, right, after they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and so they had to be the highest bidder. It's not like it's not like they stole the guy.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not saying they stole the guy. I think you bring up cogent points, good points, as you always do. Where I would, like, the part there that I would disagree is just like from a factual perspective, they didn't have that 5th round pick to spend on a so any running back they would have taken before the 6th round, they would have had.
But if you're going to be throwing around future picks,
so that's what I'm saying. Back,
you could have gotten one of those picks.
So I'm saying so anyone that you were going to get at that point, you would have had to trade for. And I think that when you look at the draft assets you would have given, I don't think you would have I don't think you would have acquired a better running back than Swift.
Yeah, and
even though it's for 4 years, I just think you have to look at it like the expected value. The expected value that Swift will give you over 1 year, I think, is better than the expected value that a running back they would acquired, that they would have drafted, would give you over a 4-year contract.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's a good trade. I think the people who made the argument for Bijan Robinson as a first-round pick because this is a ready-to-win roster, like maybe now is the time to overpay for that production. This is a much lesser version of that, where even if it is a slight overpay or whatever it is, this is a guy who's going to give that room real juice and makes a tangible difference in the quality and the upside of the offense this season. I think it's a good trade. I just don't think it's like, it's not like stealing a 6th-round pick for Kerry Vincent or something like that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's
exciting. It's a very exciting move for the offense. Like, I think it brings some juice. And I haven't watched DeAndre Swift's every carry, but in that game in week 1, I thought he was pretty explosive. Like he looked fun to watch to me.
Yeah. That's the other thing about him is that there are different types of running backs. He's not the running back who is just like this pedestrian league average guy, or even above that, but who might get you, 4 or 5 yards a carry, but he won't get you 20-yard runs or 30-yard runs. I mean, Swift has a big play in him. He can catch the ball. He had what, a 60-catch season 2 years ago, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Zach's got a whiteboard in his office that you can't see that has every current NFL player's 60-catch seasons.
So I think it was a good trade, and I'm impressed.
I think it was a good trade too.
I'm impressed that what they did.
It's also I said the thing about everybody knows he's available, but it is also true that like most teams in the NFL already have a running back, a real running back, and so there probably weren't that many bidders.
It's like supply and demand.
The Eagles probably had one of the worst running back groups in the league. So I think it's a good move.
I'll say Howie's like 12 o'clock hour today. His noon hour today was just pandering to me, basically. I mean, not literally, but like I
think
we
that's
had
how he thought of it too. He's like, you know what? I don't know if I'm getting enough left from Zach.
I don't
get Zach back in my back pocket.
We had to grade the move successfully.
I know that Zach's hitting the free agency wire. He's hitting the waiver wire now that he's requested his release from Jonathan Gannon, and so I want to try to get him back in my roster.
Oh, Bo, I'm not going to respond to that. My integrity is unimpeachable here. Unimpeachable. So we had to grade those 2 acquisitions successively. And I'm trying this weekend not to give
you kept saying, well, I said this, and so I gotta stay true.
I gotta stay true. It's like I said,
also, new information changes things. You don't have to necessarily stay cemented to your previous position. But
no, I agree. But if like 12 hours ago I said they should have taken, or I would have taken Kelee Ringo at the Sidney Brown pick, right, and then they take Kelee Ringo the next day, I can't be like, oh well, you know what? I'm actually down on Kelee Ringo. Because
I do think that one is actually different, because that was a different price to pay than you would have sending. We'll get to that, but like sending a future third to pick him in the 4th round is different than if you had just picked him in the 3rd round.
Valid point.
I think the Swift stuff.
My point is that like both those. I was like, I like Swift. I like Ringo.
There's the one bit of like unknown here is it's a guy coming back to Philly. You never know how that works out. The Eagles have talked about that. There have been times when that has sort of blown up on them. Daryl Worley, for example. Obviously, it worked out very well last year with Hassan Reddick. Yeah. It seems to me like this is a guy who, for whatever reason, has butted heads with coaches before, and so now it's an interesting set of personalities in that room, but I think it's still a bet worth making. And obviously, as you said, like they feel like they know him well. So
yeah. And it's also similar to Ajayi in the sense that like if you get a good season out of him, then that's what you're looking for here.
It's like CJ Gardner-Johnson to me. It's like let's get him on this 1-year prove it deal as he's about to hit it to hit free agency. This is his, like, he's never going to be more motivated than he is right now. Let's be the beneficiaries of that.
100%. Well said.
Yeah, I think that's right. And also knowing that they didn't add any other offensive weapons with their 7 picks in the draft, they still found a way to materially improve their weaponry this weekend. So
that's a good point.
I think it's all good. All right, let's talk about Ringo. So Howie Roseman talked about this during the pre-draft press conference, that this is not a thing that he has usually done.
He's never done it at this point.
You did look into that? Okay.
Now, well, like this high, yeah.
This high, right. Usually the Eagles are the ones who are doing the reverse of this.
Yep, exactly.
They're buying future round picks for the discount of, holding on to the marshmallow.
Yeah, and today's dollar is better than tomorrow's. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Instead, top of the before the draft had even started, we heard that they had traded into the 3rd pick of the round for Kelee Ringo. Well, we didn't hear that. We found that out when they made the pick. But and Howie said when he was asked about this possibility, a good preview question by Jimmy Kempski, that it would all depend on like what the grade on the player is, and they would look into that. And so that means to me that the Eagles had probably at the very least a high 3rd round grade on Kelee Ringo, if not like a late 2nd, basically.
Yep.
And so they go and take him at the 4th round. And this is one where, to me, like, you comped it to Josh Sweat, and I think I understand that comp because the profile is exactly what you would look for, right? Like it's an important position. He's young. He's got experience playing at the highest level. But the flip side to that is you sort of worry, like, what does everybody else know that we don't know? Like,
without a doubt,
like
you're
why
right.
is he still here?
Yes,
because it's such a good profile that, like,
yes.
What's going on here? And so, is it a case of you talking yourself a little bit too much into, well, let's keep this Georgia thing going. Like, we feel like we've got the infrastructure for him. Ian Rappaport reported that part of the reason that he was still on the board, one, was he had a shoulder injury his freshman year that some teams were worried about, and 2, they described him as having a quote unquote 5-star mentality, where it was like, he wasn't necessarily the most gung-ho to practice guy. Howie Roseman actually addressed that specifically in the post-draft press conference and said they had no such concerns about his character. They in fact like his character, and no flags at all in the medical. I think I think it's sort of similar to the DeAndre Swift thing. I think it's a fine process. I would say a little bit more than the Swift thing. It feels a little bit like an overpay, but they have so many picks next year that I'm not super worried about it. And it is like to get a young cornerback with upside on the outside who they don't need to expect to play right away. Again, feels like a good bit of business.
Well said. And I made the Josh Sweat comp because Josh Sweat, when the Eagles drafted him in 2018, he was this former top overall recruit who went to Florida State, and like he started at Florida State. He didn't have great technique. There were like injury questions there that you didn't know about the fit. He drops to the 4th round, and at that time the Eagles had a lot of veterans on their among their edge rushers, and Sweat spent basically 2 years developing. And Sweat was really young. He had just turned 21 a few weeks before the draft at that point. And so, and then by year 3, he's getting to the quarterback. By year 4, they pay him. And by year 5, he's a double-digit sack producer, right? That's obviously not your typical outcome for a 4th round pick. But I bring that up because Ringo was a 5-star recruit, which was kind of used against him in that
Ringo 5-star.
He's I don't mean to like scoff at the report because it's well sourced, and I got to imagine there's some smoke there, right? It wasn't picked out of thin air. But the flip side is like Georgia had no problem starting this guy every week from the time he was eligible to play as a redshirt freshman to the time he left. He was a starter, right? So if if they were concerned about him, they weren't concerned enough to play the guy behind him over him, right? They wanted him out on the field on Saturdays. And he's not yet 21 years old. I put that little, I was pandering to my host here, Bo, about Hendon Hooker. By the time Ringo becomes a free agent, like his rookie contract expires, he'll be younger than Hendon Hooker is right now.
Well, I thought you were going to tell me where Hendon Hooker is going to be by then, because I was worried about that answer.
Yeah, he'll be younger than Hendon Hooker is right now. He's 20. He'll be a 24-year-old free agent if you think about that. And so he can,
I mean, he's a shade under 6'2". He's 207.
Yep.
He ran a 4.36. I did watch him with Sheil and Coach Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I was not super impressed. I know that
Marvin Harrison Jr. picked him apart. Yeah,
right. There are people who described him as like pretty stiff.
He
did sort of look stiff to me. Mm-hmm. Not like the most fluid athlete. He
doesn't have long arms. Yeah,
doesn't have long arms. He tested as a good straightaway athlete, but not a good, like an explosive jumper.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So he's not a perfect prospect.
No,
but like if the Eagles had drafted him with the Tyler Steen pick or with the Sidney Brown pick, nobody would have batted an eye.
Exactly. And they were considering doing so, which was why they made this trade, right? He was in the bucket they were considering the day before. And the fact that Howie made this trade says a lot to me about the way they graded him. Because Howie, as you outlined, he doesn't want to do this type of deal, right? You're overpaying when you do this type of deal. You're not. Howie likes deals where he's the winner, right? Where he's getting it on the other team, not where he's paying more in the trade, but he paid more in the trade because he wanted the player.
Yeah, and this is if you're going to be worried about the process that went into it, as he described it, it was interesting that like part of what led to this is that they had the break, right? And so they came back in today. They looked back at the board. He was obviously like he was the highest rated guy there. He was standing out. And so they're talking about it, and they're like, well, he is a higher grade, and like than what we would have to give up to get the pick. Whereas, like, probably if this was in the heat of the draft, they would not have done this because they would have stayed, calm and
sure.
More steady. So I don't know, maybe you just process wise worry about that a little bit, but it's hard to really get upset about it. I think it's a totally fine deal. And like if they had come out of this draft without a cornerback, that would have been a disappointment, right? So especially knowing you're getting a third round comp pick next year, like I don't think that you can say, we're not expecting to pick. We're think we're going to be picking at the back of the third round, so it's okay. We're not moving up like that much. Basically, I don't like that process, but if you know that you're still going to get a third round pick, I think it's fine.
And I don't want to go overboard with this because when they say it, we make fun of them about it. And so I don't want to be made fun of for saying it, right? They did this with like Joe Kruger and Shelton Gibson, where if he came back next year, he'd be that. But if that profile was in next year's draft, as a 3-year start, like this was if he's a 3-year starter at Georgia who won 3 national championships, let's say. I mean, I don't know if they're going to win the title next year, but started for back-to-back national champs, is 6'2", 210, runs a 4.3. Where's that guy going in the draft? And that is something that Howie alluded to, like based on the grade that they had. They don't know if they're going to get that type of player with that pick next year. So I think a good way to frame it is when they make this type of trade, it's not the value of the pick that they're focused on. It's the value of the player that they're focused on. And they like the value of the player here.
I think one way to just sort of look at the 10,000-foot view of what they did over the course of this weekend before we get to the last 2 picks in terms of what they had entering draft weekend, draft capital-wise, and what they left with. They entered, obviously, with 2 firsts, a second, a late second, a late third, and 2 sevenths. This year, they finished with the 2 firsts. They moved back. They got a third. They moved up and got an earlier third, a fourth, a sixth, and a seventh. So you added one good bit of mid-round capital out of thin air, and you moved up from the 7th to the 6th. in exchange for that, they sent away a 3rd-round pick next year, a 4th-round pick next year, and a 4th-round pick in 2025, and got back a 5th-round pick next year. So you did borrow fairly significantly from the middle rounds next year, basically a 3rd and a 4th, and getting back a 5th. But if that's the price of moving up to get Jalen Carter and getting Kelee Ringo when you didn't have a pick at all, I think that's fine. I don't think that's bad at all. Yeah,
I agree. I don't like keep borrowing future picks. I mean, future picks is not like cap space because there's a fine. The pick inventory is not going up, and they probably won't ever have as many.
Except that it literally is for them. I mean, not really, because they know what they're getting. It's whether
but
it's official or not, they know what they're getting. But
But I also think next year is an abnormal year because I can't imagine they're going to have that many desirable free agents every single year. Now,
it makes 2025 a different year.
Yes, right. Exactly. So that factors into it. But yeah, I'm curious to see what types of trades they make around the roster deadline, because they're going to have a lot of spots that are really competitive this year. And it wouldn't surprise me if during training camp, Howie tries to turn some guys they have for 7th and 6th. And the reason because you saw tonight, I don't want to give Howie too much credit because it was low leverage, but they turned 2 7ths into they essentially turned 2 7ths into a future.
Into a 5th.
Yeah, exactly. So the more late picks you get it's just more flexibility. And and they are going to have some spots here. I was looking at the depth chart during the 7th round tonight. There are spots that are thin. Like, this isn't the perfect roster, and we can get to that. But there are other spots. About it now? Okay, but just to finish the thought, there are other spots where they have some real quality players, and not everyone's going to make the team. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do at those positions.
Where are they really deep? Defensive line?
Yeah, defensive line. I think to a degree, interior offensive line.
Sort of, yeah.
I mean, Sua Opeta, and now he didn't have.
No, there's no bigger Sua fan than me, but he was. He already didn't they cut him in the middle of the season, so it's not like
true. I mean, I think defensive line. I wonder if even guys that they signed as insurance, like if a Contavious Street, for instance, has value during the preseason, now that they have a Jalen Carter, right? Even corner, could they flip a Zach McPherson, or could they flip a Josiah Scott? I mean, I just think that they have guys who are on their like 2 deep, 3 deep, where they might have some flexibility. Even running back, right? Can they flip one of those? I mean, can they flip a Boston Scott? You don't know, but when a guy's under contract,
easier to flip him than flip Jordan Davis.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Now, I don't think they're going to trade Quez Watkins anymore because they didn't address wide receiver.
Well, let's talk about that. So as you went through the roster, I don't get the sense that they're like super, super deep, maybe like you do, but there are a few places where there are some good pieces of quality depth. Where are you on alert about them still needing to improve before, let's say, week 1?
Well, I'll start with the middle of the defense and the back 7, or the back 6, let's say, because of the way they play. Safety and linebacker. And let's start with linebacker. Nakobe Dean has been groomed for this. We haven't seen him in that type of role. Nicholas Moro has experience, but again, they guaranteed him next to nothing in free agency, and that's your top 2. And they have no one behind that. Christian Ellis, Sean Bradley, Davion Taylor. That's it. So
I think a linebacker is I would say over safety, I would put wide receiver, but I think linebacker is the most pressing. Like, if you're looking for a CJ Gardner-Johnson type trade, that's the place where I would expect it to come.
Yes.
Because they need, I mean, they're not going to go into week 1 with Nakobe Dean and Nicholas Moro as your starters and Christian Ellis and Sean Bradley as your backups, right?
Yeah.
Like they need a guy there. And it doesn't have to be anyone on even the level of CJ Gardner-Johnson, but they need somebody. I mean, I don't know, because we think about like the resource allocation. I mean, they played seasons with TJ Edwards and Alex Singleton as the starting linebackers, right? Like Nate Gary, and like they do. If there's one position they devalue, that's the position. But I don't think a team with Super Bowl aspirations is going in with Nicholas Moro and Nakobe Dean.
No, now I do think you're going to see a lot of 5-man fronts and 5-man backs. So there's going to be a lot of times when you're only really going to have one linebacker on the field, and you hope that's Nakobe Dean. But I hear you there. And then at safety, they love Sidney Brown.
On the street, just for the record, Rashaan Evans, Miles Jack, Jalen Smith, who stinks, Anthony Barr, who's old, Quan Alexander, Deion Jones, who once played with Michael Dunn. Yeah, it's not pretty.
I'm curious. You actually asked us how he mouthed you the other day about where Nolan Smith's going to play, that they're viewing Nolan Smith as an outside linebacker.
Right.
Because I did hear.
Well, that's why I asked.
Yeah. I heard in the week leading up to the draft that if you want this guy to play, they use the term stack linebacker, right? He's done that before, and he has elite athleticism that if you want to cross train him there, like he has speed around the edge. But if you look at, I don't want to use the term positionless player, but if you look at him like this canvas almost with athleticism and with intelligence and with football character, that you can build different roles. Maybe that's a way to get him on the field early when Reddick and Sweat are.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Okay.
I mean, I
like him just a designated pass rusher.
Don't mess him up.
Pick in the track.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I agree.
But I get the thought process. But
yeah.
I think they've got a little work to do there, but they got a lot of time to do it. And
then safety, I'm not as seduced by their like Sidney Brown love yet. I haven't seen him play in the system. I haven't seen the system yet, but right there, we talked about it last night.
Mr. Roseman,
that should be a drop for you. We should take away the dirt of the earth drop, and let's turn the camera on.
You got it, Zach.
Yes, yeah. Let's turn the camera on to the Athletics Red Star reporter. I think we need to see Sidney Brown play. That's the guy. It's actually on the Athletic now.
We've seen Sidney Brown play about as much as we've seen Nakobe Dean play.
Yeah, but we've had up on the Athletic this template of different categories from today from this weekend, and you answered what the most interesting pick or
biggest surprise.
And Sidney Brown, they're really banking on this guy. He's going to be a starting safety, and there's an adjustment there, and they're going against consensus. So I'm curious to see how that works.
Me too. But I think they've got many more balls in the air at safety than they do at linebacker. I mean, between Sidney Brown, between a rookie 3rd round pick, Reed Blankenship, who showed something for real last year, Terrell Edmonds, who has starting experience, and even like Justin Evans and Josiah Scott, like there are guys who can play in the NFL back there. Whereas at linebacker, like for it to be Sean Bradley and Christian Ellis as the 2 deep, like that needs some addressing.
I guess,
and they're not done. I mean, we're not. Yeah. I don't want to get caught in the in the middle of the game here. There's a long way to go, but that is a place where they need to make some work.
I guess where you and I look at this differently is number one. I wasn't expecting them to make a material effect on their linebacker core during this draft weekend. Number one, And then number two, you need at least 2 safeties on the field on every down. You're going to play one linebacker a lot of times here, right? I got to imagine with the defensive tackles.
They didn't play that much 5-on-5 last year. I mean, they played a good amount of it.
Yeah. I just think with the defensive tackles they have, with the edge rushers they have,
you
got to get those guys on the field, right?
But even still, like, to count on Nakobe Dean to be as good as TJ Edwards was last year is a stretch, right? Like, at safety, you even have Avonte Maddox, right? Like, if they had drafted instead of Kelee Ringo, if they had drafted a corner who had some nickel versatility, that would have maybe made a little bit more sense, right?
Nickels are a dime a dozen. That was a joke. Yeah, Marissa sold it. I appreciate it.
I like that, Zach.
Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you.
I mean, I wouldn't have minded seeing a linebacker in the 6th round instead of Thompson McGuire, but we can get to that.
Jeez. First off,
we'll
show
get
some
to
respect to his name. His name's Tanner McKee. Okay, show some respect to his name.
Timmy Mackey.
He's a married man. He's like, come on.
What is that? What is it? Why does that afford him any extra?
How did he meet his wife?
They grew up.
They grew up together in Corona, California.
I'm guessing they went to the same church.
Maybe so. Yeah, they grew up together in Corona, California.
Why does he get extra respect as a married man?
I was just gonna say this is the husband of somebody.
How dare you? He's a married man.
His wife might be listening to the show right now. Mrs. McKee, if you're watching, welcome to the Birds with Friends community.
They might have parents or family or friends. That doesn't mean Mr. McGuire deserves any extra. No. Like I don't. Should I treat you better because you're married than someone who's not married? I'm putting down the seat for anybody.
You're touching a lot of seats. I know that. So,
Zach, aren't you washing your hands anyway?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
So what's the difference?
What's the difference? I told. Well, do we really need to go back to this?
Well, but don't pretend. Don't try to gaslight me and tell me this is the first time you've ever done that. You did it because this is probably your general habit in that atmosphere.
I told you that I leave it at. So if I'm opening it, like if it's down when I get there, I'll put it up and then I'll put it down. I've already touched it. If it's up when I'm in there, I leave it as it was. Okay. Like I'm touching the flusher, I'm touching the sink, right? But
you're touching the flusher. That's a whole nother story. You don't use your foot for that?
My foot? No,
I don't use the foot for the flusher either.
Really?
Yeah. No, but I wash my hands very well.
I know, but still.
I thought you'd be sitting on the toilet seat for.
No, not there. Not there. Definitely not there. No, but I mean, listen, you're
I mean, if you're touching the flusher, why wouldn't you touch the
flusher?
Seat?
Like, what's one more thing if you're gonna wash your hands?
But okay, Claire, a lot of people agree with me. In a public restroom, use your foot for sure. Oh, yeah, that's what your foot is for, according to Jason. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to move to that, but either way, you're gonna wash your hands.
I know.
Yeah.
But
all right.
You're just gonna stop. Stuff. You're not even gonna.
Josh agrees with me.
You're gonna go prevent defense.
Yeah. I was trying to think in the drive to work today. I was trying to think what the best approach is because after the combine pod, I said to myself, I'm just gonna roll with everything. That's the way I'm gonna do it. But then when I was listening to our show, I was like, Zach, you don't have to. I don't know the proper strategy. Actually, if our listeners, this is like a break in the NFL calendar here. We transition from the draft to the lull of the offseason, if you will. If you have any insight for the best way to handle Bo on the pod, okay, my DMs are open. Drop me a DM. Send me an email at zberman@theathletic.com.
I did listen back to the Emmanuel Forbes bet. I'm not sure that either of us covered ourselves in glory on that one.
No, I was not prepared I was not prepared for that one. Yeah,
I feel bad about it, like attacking the guy. I hope he does a good job. Like like everybody else, I love like all the videos of this weekend. I was watching the Cowboys guy call Deuce Vaughn and Bryant, and just sitting here crying.
Yeah,
like all that stuff hits me. All these guys having like achieving their dreams is like the most awesome thing. I didn't mean it to make it about Emmanuel Forbes, but I do think the Commanders made a terrible pick, and I do expect that Zach's going to be paying $500 to my favorite charity.
What's your favorite charity, out of curiosity?
Marissa Dunn.
No, we actually have to come up with our charities for our cameos.
Yeah, we
have a lot of money in the cameos that we are going to divide between 3 charities or 1 charity in Philadelphia. So yeah, if anyone has any suggestions for that too, before I go on maternity leave, I need to make sure that is all donated and taken care of. Yes. And thanks to everybody who has contributed to that.
Maybe we can make that part of the Ospreys.
Yeah. Sounds good.
A lot of bidet chat going on in the talk going on in the chat right now.
Have you ever used a bidet, Zach?
No, I've never seen a bidet. I don't think I.
Yeah, Bo, have you? You're looking like you have.
No, I mean I have used one, but I don't have one.
In what context have you used one?
Like if I was going at a place that had one, I think
where do they have
European or
yeah? Where do they have them?
Oh. It's much more accepted, but I don't know. I'm not anti bidet. I would be happy to use one.
I'm very pro urinal. If we're,
I don't think those two things are serving the same purpose.
That's a drop.
But you're pro urinal because there's no seat to put down. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, it's so much more efficient.
Of course, if a urinal is available, of course a urinal is preferable.
Yeah. Yes,
but I don't think that has anything that's not solving any bidet issues.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't familiar with the bidet. Okay. Sorry.
Before we get to the last 2 picks, Zach, I do want to ask you, just generally, how do you feel about, like, are you uneasy at all about the Georgia-ness of the draft?
First off, I'm uneasy about the last 3 days of this podcast. This is what I'm uneasy about. No, I'm not. I'm not uneasy about the Georgia-ness of it all, and I'll explain it here. They're that good. I mean, look what they did to TCU. Look what they did to everyone last year. They are that good, especially on defense, number 1. Number 2, I mentioned this the other night. There was more of a concentration of talent in college football than any time that I followed it. The best players go to the best schools. And you might say, yeah, Captain Obvious, that's always been the case. It's more the case now with the way recruiting rankings are, with the proliferation of camps during the summer, like elite football camps during the summer. It's much easier to identify the best players earlier, and those best players tend to concentrate at the top schools. And if you just look at the recruiting rankings 3 years ago, and you look at the first round picks tonight, or the first round picks this week rather, you'll see a lot of the same names. So I'll start with that. I don't have an end. And by the way, you're seeing this early in the draft because you're drafting their top players. You're not drafting the 10th best player on their team. You're drafting the top guys on their team. I'll start with that. Then, and I don't want to speak over you here or use your point because I imagine you're going to touch on this, but the Eagles had a period, almost a 2-decade period, like a 10, 12 year period where they actually didn't draft a lot of these guys. I had a story that came out the morning of the national championship game in 2020, the Alabama-Ohio State game, January 2020, where the Eagles had been eliminated at that point, right? That was a bad season. We were looking for content, and I wrote a piece kind of previewing that night's game and had notes about the game for Eagles fans because the Eagles had a high pick and whatnot. And I had the numbers in there of the amount of players that they had drafted from school that played in college national championships or in the BCS, well, since the BCS turned to the college football playoff. And it was so few players, and including that list included like Elijah Qualls, for instance, and Joe Walker, not your top picks. They had a period of time.
Ball got the ball.
Yeah, they had a period of time where they weren't drafting from that. And you asked Howie Roseman about this tonight, and I'll let you get to it, but I'll let you get to what Howie said. But there certainly was a shift in the way they evaluated and the way they looked at this. And to me, yeah, the best players early in the draft go to the best schools, and I have no issue with it because I think the guys they're drafting have been the best players.
So I asked Howie Roseman because he said this last year. And I think I asked him about it last year because they had done the 2 Alabama guys at the top of the 2021 draft, and they came back and did the 2 Georgia guys in the first and third round the following year. And he said something to the effect of, like, the longer you do this, the less complicated you think it is. The best players are at the best schools. Go get them. You can trust that these guys are gonna stay the course. They've been through it before, all that stuff. And then obviously this year they draft 3 Georgia guys. And I asked him when that changed, and he did. Like, we sort of speculated about this. He pointed to 2020, which he once again threw COVID under the bus a little bit, which his favorite thing to do. Well, not his favorite thing, but a thing that he does enjoy doing is being like, and I'm not making excuses about COVID. Like, COVID affected a lot of people, but it also did affect our draft. Now they ended up with Jalen Hurts, so it was all worth it. But he pointed to that.
Who, by the way, played in the college football playoffs.
Right. So, and the obvious inference there is, Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. And he says we didn't get a chance to know the guys as well. But that was interesting. And he said, if I read it, the important parts, he said, in 2021, we knew that we had to make sure our process was really tight as Coach Sirianni came on board, and we started with the 2 Alabama guys. The way those guys worked, the kind of players they are, certainly the kind of people they are, it just reminded us that no different than when you're trying to hire someone for a position. Obviously, you want guys to be really talented at what they do and whatever role they're in, but the other stuff matters as well. The competition level matters too. You see them play on the biggest games on the biggest stage against the best competition, so it's an easier evaluation. And I think all of that stuff makes sense. It's not perfect. There are, most of the best players in the NFL are not from the teams who won national championships, right? You still got to go find the players. And there can be a bit of an overvaluing there, but in a macro sense, it makes sense. With respect to the way that this draft played out, I guess there is a bit of a nagging concern that just like these are the best players from the best teams, that means that there are no secrets here. Like, every NFL team knows that these are the best players on the best teams. And so it's not like you're getting some kind of edge in evaluating them, right? Like, everybody knows that Kelee Ringo is good, is coming from Georgia. There's a reason he's still available. It's the same with Nolan Smith at 30. But it's hard to individually knock any of these picks, basically. And Howie Roseman said, it would be silly for us to, just like it would be silly for us to go draft a guy because they're from Georgia. It would be silly for us to be on the clock and be like, oh, well, we've already got too many Georgia guys. We can't take this guy. So I'm not I don't think any of it is bad process or overweighting it, but I don't think that the Eagles have solved the draft because they're drafting players from Georgia. I think it's just the bets that they're making because everybody else knows that they're from Georgia too.
So yeah, you're right. But I go back to saying, when you watch Georgia play, you see why people don't beat them. They're that good. I went back to that article. It's January 2021. So the 2020 season. Okay. And at that point, since the creation of the college football playoff, the Eagles had drafted 5 players who appeared in college football playoff games: Jalen Hurts, Sidney Jones, Elijah Qualls, Kayvon Wallace, and Joe Walker. Okay. And if you just look at what they've done the past 3 years, that has changed dramatically. So we start there. This is another thing to point out. I wrote this again, January 2021. Since the start of the Howie Roseman, Doug Peterson era in 2016, the Eagles have drafted multiple players from 6 schools. They've drafted 3 from TCU, Auburn, and West Virginia, 2 from Stanford, Penn State, and Washington. Okay. So if you're just looking at where you're concentrating your talent acquisition, that the volume of players they were getting from non-elite schools, right? If you say the best schools have the best players, that's why they win the most games and they win the most championships. The amount of players they were getting from schools that were not at that level is probably a bit concerning, because what you're doing,
such a small sample. I mean, it's so like not random is not the word, but it's like just because they drafted Elijah Qualls in the 6th or 7th round to go along with Sidney Jones doesn't mean that they were like, we need to get guys from Washington because we're up late and nobody else is watching.
No, but if Alabama, if at that point Alabama had been winning every year, Ohio State had been.
Well, then why aren't the Commanders any good? All they do is draft Alabama guys.
Well, look who their best players are. The Alabama I would argue the Alabama and the Ohio State players that they drafted, their best players went to Alabama and Ohio State, right? Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne and Terry McLaurin. So, yeah, I would push back on that. I would say where they missed is they missed on a quarterback from Ohio State, right? The late Dwayne Haskins. But, yeah, their problem has not, frankly, been drafting Alabama guys. They've had good ROI on those picks. So I'm not saying go into a draft saying we're only going to draft Georgia and Alabama players, but it was an odd coincidence that for all those years. So the title of that story I'm reading from is "Will Devontae Smith break the Eagles' streak?" Making sense
good for you
of Bama OSU
nailed it
track record. And so the Eagles haven't
That's like
drafted.
calling your shot, like when you asked Rob Kerrigan about George Karlaftis in like October.
Yeah. So at that point, the Eagles hadn't drafted a player directly from Alabama in 19 years. And Nick Saban at that point was coaching his 8th national championship game in 12 years, a period in which the Eagles had made 90 draft selections and Alabama had 92 players drafted. Now, the caveat there is Jalen Hurts can be considered an Alabama guy, even though he's not directly from Alabama. But to that point, Jalen Hurts was a great pick, right? He was an Alabama guy who turned out to be really good. So, I look at it. It's what if you're watching the national championship game, and for all these years you don't have guys who are playing it in that game, I would say, are your evaluators so good that they can find the guys who aren't bringing their teams to national championships, right? I mean, Devontae Smith was the Heisman Trophy winner, was the best player in the country. The Eagles drafted him 10th overall. He's a great player in the NFL. Landon Dickerson he won the Remington Award, right? As the top center in college football. He is a really good guard in the NFL. I mean, we'll see on Jordan Davis. We'll see on Nakobe Dean. But, I mean, Jalen Hurts was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year at Alabama. Now, he got benched. He transferred. But he was a Heisman Trophy finalist at Oklahoma, which is a blue-blooded school. Lane Johnson was, a starting right tackle or starting left tackle on a really good on some good Oklahoma teams.
Where can I read about that?
You hear about that on The Athletic. Even Josh Sweat was on really good teams at Florida State he signed the program actually declined while he was there. But
okay, well, I mean, Jason Kelsey was a walk-on linebacker. Yeah,
but I'm saying, that's like more of an outlier. I'm saying, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, I don't think any of that is necessarily wrong. My antenna are up anytime something like fits so neatly, but I don't think that any of these were like bad picks because of that. I just think think about.
Another way I would frame it is so the Sixers Celtics series starts Monday night. Okay, the best players in those series, where did they go to college? Right.
Well, the NBA is different.
But my point is, in most places,
the talent is so concentrated in the NBA.
But the best players go to play for the best teams, right? The teams that win in the end often have the most talent on them. It's not a secret, right? Now, it's not like there are no absolutes here, but yeah,
all I'm saying is that the league knows that too. There are 31 other teams know that as well.
Sure.
Right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like the Eagles have solved something here. That's all.
Okay.
All right, let's get to the last 2 picks. But before we do that, we got to shout out the best pick of the draft. Round 6, 206 overall. The Cincinnati Bengals on the clock take the official wide receiver prospect of Birds with Friends, Andrei Iosivas. He gets to go play with Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. They drafted an old guy wide receiver in the 4th round, Charlie Jones. That guy's job is gone. Andrei Iosivas has taken that job on day 1. What a moment. Congratulations to the Iosivases. Congratulations to Coach Flynn. He joked via text message that at this rate, his next player will be drafted by the time he's like 75 or something like that. But very happy for everybody. Fun
very
moment.
Happy. Awesome moment.
Yeah.
Go Bengals. Gets to stay in the black and orange.
Yeah. And I mean, first off, it's a credit to Andrei Iosivas, number 1. But it's a credit to Coach Flynn too, because the reality is a player that doesn't go to Alabama or a player that doesn't go to Georgia, like if you go to Princeton, you got to be coached up. You're not arriving as like the best player, as a draftable player on day, or what the league would deem that on day 1. And he got coached. I give Coach Flynn a lot of credit. I give Andrei Iosivas a lot of credit. Give the Princeton program credit, and hopefully more players who have really good test scores and aspire for a world-class education in addition to a good Ivy League football program. We'll see that and go play for Coach Flynn.
Yeah.
Well said. Coach Flynn, we love you. All right.
Congrats.
Later in the 6th round, or earlier in the 6th round, I actually don't remember. The Eagles did something interesting, Zach.
Quarterback factory opened again.
The quarterback factory reopened. Somebody walked in. It was a dusty place. There were some windows broken. There were cobwebs all over the place, but somebody found the light switch. They flipped it back on. They flipped the
with the hand with the wedding band, probably.
Yeah, they flipped a little thing on the wall, and all of a sudden those old machines started ricketing back up again, and out popped Todd McShay. Is that his name?
His name's Tanner McKee.
Okay.
Tanner McKee, who went to Stanford, was a big recruit. Actually, an interesting nugget about Tanner McKee. Alabama recruited him. And on his recruiting visit to Alabama, Jalen Hurts spent some time with him. So his new teammate, Jalen Hurts.
Yes, it's a very funny dichotomy between the Eagles' 2 late picks, because Tanner McKee played 2 years in college, but is 23 years old, whereas Moro Ojomo was like a 5-year senior and is not yet 23 because he entered as a 16-year-old, while McKee went on his 2-year Mormon mission to Brazil.
Yes. So Tanner and Tanner McKee left early from Stanford, so he's not like a 25-year-old.
His birthday was 2 days ago. Yep. Turned 23.
Yep, on the first night of the draft.
Left as a redshirt sophomore.
Pro Football Focus's comp for him was Kerry Collins. Dane Brugler, I should have mentioned Dane Brugler, said he could have like a Mike Glennon career or that type of player.
We did the Zoom with him. His neck did not seem quite that long.
So Tanner McKee he's a quarterback from a different age, if you will. He's your now different age being 23, right? Now he's a
bit of an odd fit, but yeah,
he's more of your mid 90s drop back quarterback, or at least that's the way he played when he was at Stanford. And he's coming to an offense now that doesn't play like that. Now Nick Sirianni's mentioned multiple times, emphasized this, that your backup doesn't need to stylistically be the same as your starter. That said, when they signed Marcus Mariota, one of the things they said is that their offense wouldn't have to change if he goes in. Ian Book, who's the 3rd quarterback now, has more mobility than Tanner McKee. With Tanner McKee, what you're banking on is he's going to be an accurate quarterback. Nick Sirianni talked about his processing, right, in the press conference afterwards. The skepticism here is Well, the obvious one, as you wrote about, and as I alluded to as well, it's hard to hit on quarterbacks late in the draft as it is. The Eagles had the Clayton Thorson experience. Number one. Number two.
I mean, the history of quarterbacks drafted after the 4th round is like shockingly dire.
There was an insane run on quarterbacks.
Yes, exactly. And so that was the second thing I was going to say. Yeah. So this year there was this big time run, and he was the 13th quarterback taken, right? So in a year when teams said that they really want quarterbacks, and also in a year when Kalen Kaler had a good story out earlier this week about how more quarterbacks went back this year because of NIL money. So you would think that like the middle round quarterbacks and later aren't there's not as deep a pool as there have been.
Right. It's not like you got, as you said, like the 7th best quarterback.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got a player that the league deemed the 13th best quarterback. And then it's not like you drafted Tim DeMorad, I think his name is, from Fordham, who had like these great numbers, but he's playing at a
Tyson Bagent.
Yes. Someone from who you say, all right, you can see why the league missed him. This guy played at Stanford, which has produced like highly rated quarterbacks in recent years. He replaced Davis Mills, who's
now there's a guy with a long neck.
Years. In the past, Stanford quarterbacks have people know Stanford quarterbacks, right? I mean, David Shaw has been a respected head coach and offensive coach in recent years. So So the fact that he's the 13th quarterback taken and a 6th round pick makes you think like the odds are against this working out, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
the Eagles saw something.
I think like if we had to stork rank the picks, like this is probably the worst pick because the odds are so far from this hitting. Like the odds are against him making the roster probably. Maybe not. I mean, it's probably a bit about, he's probably about, I'd give him like 59 turkeys to make the roster, but the upside of him hitting his upside as a number 2 quarterback,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Is so much more valuable to the Eagles than probably the upside of like whatever linebacker they would have taken, being a special teamer and a playable 4th linebacker. Or a cornerback, being, I don't know, whomever you want to say. Mm-hmm. So I understand it. It's Howie Roseman talked about how they thought this was sort of like a statement offseason for them to sort of declare what they care about. And so you come out of this draft with 3 defensive front guys, an offensive lineman, a cornerback, and a quarterback, and then there's one outlier who's the safety. Like those are the positions they value. Those are the positions they took. I get it. I think that's all fine. It's a 6th round pick. There's really no such thing as a bad 6th round pick. Like I think it would have been a little bit more interesting for the roster if they had drafted a different position. Mm-hmm. Like I do really think that they need a wide receiver who can like do what Zach Pascal did or whatever. But as much as unlikely as Tanner McKee is to hit, I still think it's a fine pick because if he does hit, it matters to you and you can save some real money that way.
Yeah, I'm not up in arms about a 6th round pick, especially the names are starting to trickle out for some of the undrafted rookies, and in those cases, they're players who you would have said if that was the 6th round pick, maybe that would have been, fine. If you have any degree of conviction on a quarterback, you take him. I do think expectations should be held in check here. And it's more likely that Ian Book, he's going to have the path of Ian Book where he's playing on a different team in 2 years than here. But you never know. And we'll see him in camp and we'll form an evaluation once he's here.
Yeah.
Stanford is now if you're looking for optimism, Stanford was known to have a bad offensive line last year and that he did not have as much time as he would, as you would want him to have. There were conditions in place. It was they had a coaching change here, but you're the quarterback. Sometimes you have to overcome that.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the old Tank McGuire in practice.
Seemed like a nice guy. Yeah. Tanner McKee seemed like a nice guy. had a melanoma scare when he was in high school, and so he wears the bucket hat and wears sunscreen now to make sure. So make sure you get your skin checked.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was.
It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. You can't sell that.
What do you want me to do?
I mean, you want to have 10 minutes on bathroom talk, but I say I give this information about how he had a melanoma when he was in high school, and and you should get your skin checked. Just wears sunscreen.
I didn't say like
and
that was a bad thing to say. What am I supposed to follow up with that?
You literally have no
do?
I mean, what am I supposed to?
Hell yeah!
I don't know. You talk about, you start the show. You start the show talking about the bathroom, but
I agree, Zach. I make sure Michael before practice has all the good sunscreens that don't get in his eyes, that don't, all of that. So I agree with all of it.
Thank you.
Okay. As should everyone else, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody should wear sunscreen and cover their skin. The less skin, the better, I say. Let's really dial it back. Let's go. I don't
know where you're going with that one.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, last pick. Big O. Moro Ojomo. A great name for the Philly accent. I would imagine that's how the Eagles stack their board. Defensive tackle from Texas. A guy who was a 4th/5th round grade on Dane Brugler's Beast. A guy who can compete for a roster spot where they were relatively light. I think it goes back to what Roseman said about like showing what they value. Totally fine. I think it's like the Marlon Tuipulotu pick. This guy went a little bit later than they expected. It's a position that matters to them. Worth a shot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
you disagree? You're anti.
No. Sorry, I was looking at a text message that I received.
Was it about pee etiquette?
I promise it was not. No.
Was it Jeffrey?
No, it was
you
not.
Seem off your game. You seem thrown by it. Do you care to share?
Definitely not. No.
Okay.
You text
Mistress
people.
Talk, then.
No. You text people after the draft. You try to gather intel on picks and process and things of that nature. So, so no, I like the 7th round pick. First off, anyone who goes to college at 16 years old, much respect there, right? He enrolled at
Take it easy, Zach.
He enrolled at 16 years old. That's impressive. Okay,
stay away.
5-year player at Texas, real good athletic traits. Had high grades from multiple draft analysts here. So yeah, I think that I really like the pick.
Walks into the student union, sees Zach sitting there with a fake mustache and glasses, like peering over the top of a newspaper.
So I'm just gonna keep wrong here, okay? Because I don't even find that funny. So he was. I respect the process here too, because the Eagles weren't like, all right, we drafted a defensive tackle in round 1. We have players on the depth chart here. We haven't added a wide receiver. We haven't added a linebacker. Let's pick from that pool here. No, if he was clearly the best player on your board, which it sounded like he was, then take him. And that's what they did. If his floor is a good run stopper with athletic traits that could have a higher ceiling, I like that. He has long arms. There's talent to develop here. So this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally fine. Makes sense. I think if you were looking, we already talked about the like how the roster shapes out. You would have thought that they maybe would have added a wide receiver or a linebacker, but totally fine. Can't get up in arms about a 7th round pick. Good for Ojomo. Seems like a fun.
But like, wouldn't you criticize the process if they took a wide receiver or linebacker just because he's a wide receiver or linebacker?
Well, it depends on. I mean, they're not going to. First of all, they wouldn't tell us that that's why they did it. But
if you can tell by the fact that they did it, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know. Who knows how they're.
There's. I think it's almost. There's a harder path. There's a harder path to the roster if you're a defensive tackle, a 7th round defensive tackle right now than a 7th round wide receiver. True or false?
Sure, but I also think that we know what positions they value. So if they drafted a linebacker, it would tell us that they probably had a pretty high grade on him too, right?
True.
So I don't know. It's hard to tell without knowing the board. One interesting note from the undrafted guys that has already come out, which we don't have a full list yet, but we got a punter, Zach. Ty Zentner from Kansas State. I think we're gonna have to get the Puntalytics guys on this week.
Yeah, we owe them an appearance.
We sure do.
Yeah, so I don't know if it has to be this week, but at some point we should.
I mean, yeah. Why don't you just pee in their faces with that kind of response? I just invited them on this week, and now you're telling them we don't need them this week?
Oh, so you invited them on already? Okay.
I mean, just here 5 seconds ago.
Oh, okay,
I mean, I said it.
No, I
put it out into the ether. Imagine them. We know that one of them is a listener. Imagine him listening, being like, "Oh, they want us to have us on," and then 8 seconds later, Zach says, "Well, we don't have to have him on this week." Like,
Well, I thought maybe after rookie camp, when he actually shows up, we have a chance to talk to him.
No, let's get the scouting report now. This is guys coming for Sipas's job.
I mean, if you remember, our week after the week after draft show last year was one of our most listened to. We had Diana Rossini and Teron Davenport breaking down the AJ Brown trade. We had Seth Emerson talking Georgia football. So there was.
So you don't think that people are going to come for the Puntalytics? You're continuing to dig this hole and saying that you don't respect them. You're saying this is a big opportunity for us. So we have big listenership. Let's not play in the mud with the Puntalytics guys. I disagree. How about we give them the shine of a big audience?
It's kind of like starting a podcast after the draft with P-Talk, right? I think you capitalize on interest. And I got to imagine that there could be interest in.
I don't know what it is you have against our future guests.
I have nothing against them. I just think that it's, now I defer to Marissa. She is outstanding at this, and she has a background in television, and she could tell you that there's things you talk about in the A block, and there's things you talk about in the B block.
Again, burying our guests. This is unbelievable.
I mean,
how about use your megaphone, use your podium to enhance voices who might not otherwise get that shine?
Yeah,
how about doing some amplification, Zach?
For sure, I believe in amplification. Yeah, but
just not when it comes to the lowly Puntalytics crew.
I mean, let's be real. I have no say in it at the end of the day. So,
me neither, Zach. So
you're gonna decide. They're gonna come on. And we're gonna do a show, and it'll be a great show. Yes.
Wow.
We love all of our guests.
Yeah, I'm grateful for them. I appreciate all our guests.
Yes.
Yeah.
First, you sit there and you boo at the television when the Bengals draft Andre Yoshibas.
Did not happen.
Then you do this to the Puntalytics crew. Unbelievable. Trying to be nice to our guests. And we're never gonna get Jeffrey on this way.
Zach will be more than prepared to have them on, I'm sure.
Oh, I promise you that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever we do.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to talk about, Zach?
Someone named Wolfpack says Z Berm does not understand what people love about the show. I'm sure this is a very reasonable, objective third party here. Someone named Wolfpack. Yes. Yeah. There's
it's Bo on his other computer.
Exactly.
What was your favorite moment of the draft weekend?
So wait, real quick. I have this conundrum with the show in that we're on and we have these conversations, and I always believe that like you value the voice of your listenership, and so I see what's said in the comment section on here, and I'm like, oh, okay, there we go, all right, so I know what they want. And then after the show and the next morning, I go and I check out the iTunes reviews, and I'm like, whoa, these are not the people who were tuning in live. So they have a lot of different. So I can never gauge what the accurate interpretation of the
different
show is.
Yeah, I mean, like there are the sickos in the chat. You've got the like semi sickos in the YouTube comments.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the haters on iTunes. The losers.
There's message boards that talk about this show. There's it's
different subsets of the community.
Yeah.
Then you've got like Howie and Jeffrey, who we know are listening.
Well, you're a Red Star reporter, so of course, right? I mean,
Howie was giving you a shout out today. He said you asked him about. Yes, you did. Absolutely. You asked him about the trade up, and he said, "Well, I don't think I've ever done this before, but I'm sure you, Zach, can tell me whether I have or not." He said he knows that you've got that off the top of your head. He knows you've got that.
Yeah, that was a little dig, but that
was not a dig.
Okay.
Yeah,
that was a nod. He knows you're the guy.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, there was a time when there was a press conference one time with Chip Kelly, and I started a question being like, Chip, I don't believe in your time here that you've like had X amount of players active. And Chip like cuts me off, and he's like, don't say that. You definitely know. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're right, Chip. Yeah. So, when Howie said that, I know they hadn't done that type of trade that early before. They've done the inverse, but.
I was going to ask you what your favorite moment of draft weekend was for the Eagles, because we didn't get a Donahoe this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I was hearing from some people around the league who were commenting about how like culty the vibe seemed every time they showed the Eagles draft room. And it was funny because what happens is they've got the tighter room who's there when they're like deciding what to do, and then when they decide what they're doing, they bring in everybody else to come into the room and hear the calls and clap for the pick. And I had some people telling me that it looked like a very weird scene with everybody like standing in the back, dressed sort of similarly, all the gray suits, as somebody says in the chat, and then like sort of Stepfordy just clapping in unison as the picks are made.
Yeah. So first off, huge flex. You're fielding all these texts.
You already just said you texted someone and you're distracted because you're receiving responses. So you can't throw that back at me.
Huge flex. Yeah. All my league sources are texting me about the look of the Eagles room during the draft. Yeah, huge flex.
It tells you that like if they're texting even lowly me about it, that this is the thing that they were all making fun of.
Yeah, I actually didn't have that takeaway looking at the room at all. So, no, I heard you and Jeff talking about it. Jeff being Jeff McClain. I didn't think that there was anything.
Now you're revealing you're adding my source.
No,
I thought your journalistic integrity was unimpeachable.
It is.
You just added a source.
Jeff's not a source.
You don't know that.
I mean, if that's your source, but as I was saying, yeah, I didn't think there was, but isn't that fairly standard? What they were all doing, they bring everyone in, they gather around, yeah, it's nice.
It seemed a little bit different than most other rooms they showed, but it's fine.
They bring in more people. That's the thing. They bring in they call in everyone. Like they have their medical staff there. They have.
Yeah, I already said that.
Yeah. So that's what my point is that there are more people in the room so they're all crowded. They're all compact in there. Yeah. So yeah.
I don't know. I did. So, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't think Nick Sirianni likes dressing up. Right. I think Nick just wants to wear his coaching clothes.
That is 100% true.
Yeah.
And when the Jalen Hurts press conference ended, he was making fun of whoever it was that took the picture of him during the Jalen Hurts press conference, and he's sitting there slouched and like not paying attention. Within like he's wearing a tie and a jacket, and within like 5 minutes of the press conference being over, he has shed the jacket, shed the tie. He's back in the room with a basketball in his hand. Like he absolutely does not like dressing up.
And I got to say, like, why does he have to? Look, I wore a jacket the past 2 nights. I'm not saying that like you don't have to, but if he's clearly not comfortable wearing this, like, let him wear his coaching garb
if you want to.
No, you know what I mean. Let him wear his coaching garb, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So, yeah. I thought it was a fine draft weekend. I was a little more tired than I have been in past years. I think I'm getting older. So
it's a good thing about going to those college campuses, Zach.
Is what?
You get older, they all stay the same age.
You said it, not me, Bo. Yeah. Yeah.
Student union never grows old.
I mean, if you want to feel young, yeah. So,
all right. Anything else? I do think, like, if we poke a little fun at the room, though, like, just as it's nice to watch all of these players live their dream and get their name called and all this stuff and watch those calls, it is also fun to watch like the process come together for everybody who's involved in it. How we did a good job shouting people out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what the whole year is for, right? Like these 3 days is the season.
Exactly.
And so
this is their Super Bowl. Yeah.
Right. And it's fun. And so I'm glad for the people in the building that it seems like this has been a good draft for the Eagles. It's hard to really be less than excited about what they came away with, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And we've been going for an hour and a half, and I know we were talking about this before the show, so I don't know if we said this on the show, but I think big picture takeaway for Eagles fans right now is like be excited because this team was obviously they were really good last year, right? They were entering a critical offseason here. You knew they were going to lose some key players. They did lose some key players, but they also kept some guys. They made a few upside moves, and everything was in terms of additions was kind of pointing to draft weekend, right? Or the draft. They come away with arguably the best player in the draft, right? Or the best non-quarterbacks. How many teams in recent NFL history have been to the Super Bowl and have come away the next year with arguably the best non-quarterback in the draft? Like start there. That's really good at a premium position at who has a day one role. Okay. I thought they made some picks that could potentially help them long-term maintain success. I thought they acquired offensive talent, right? And I also don't think the rest of the conference got significantly better either, or got better at all. Like I didn't think the Niners had a particularly good draft. The Niners didn't have a lot of picks to work with, but that's the team you played in the championship game, who signed away, your top free agent. Okay. I thought that if you just look at the quarterbacks in the NFL right now, there are so many good quarterbacks in the AFC. There aren't that many good quarterbacks in the NFC. I thought the Eagles were Super Bowl contenders going into the draft, and I thought they got better this week. And I think that if the season started tomorrow, they don't have many egregious holes. We talked about areas that they can fortify and that they can get better. But I think like Eagles fans should be real excited about what they have going into this portion of the offseason. It's my guess is in 2 weeks the schedule will come out, and we'll see the sequence of games. It's going to be a harder schedule, but man, this is I got to think this is a good time to be an Eagles fan. You signed your quarterback last week, right? So Jalen's under contract, and there's a lot of good vibes in that building right now.
I think that's true. If I was going to pour cold water on it, I would say they're probably going to be worse on the defensive line, worse at linebacker, worse at corner, worse at safety, and worse at the offensive line.
Okay, wait here. So you think they're going to be worse on the defensive line? They lost Hargrave. Okay.
Yeah, they lost Hargrave. Yeah. You can't expect Jalen Carter to be Hargrave next year.
Okay. I mean,
they're going to be worse at linebacker, for sure.
Yeah, they're going to be worse at linebacker.
They're going to be worse at safety, for sure.
Okay.
They're going to be worse at corner because Darius Slay and James Bradbury are both a year older, and they don't have anybody else. They're going to be worse on the offensive line.
I actually think they have better corner depth this year than they had last year.
Okay.
They signed Greedy Williams. They draft Kelee Ringo. They have Zach McPherson entering year 3, right? All right, go on.
Okay. And I think for the same reason in the corner, they're going to be worse on the offensive line.
Because they're older there?
They're older and they did lose depth. And they lost, Sam Malo and Dillard. So there's no guarantees. And like a year ago, nobody would have pegged the Eagles as a Super Bowl contender, right? So somebody's going to pop up and be good in the NFC. The history of teams coming off a Super Bowl is not great. I'm just saying it's nothing's guaranteed here.
No, I think the biggest concern is
they seem like in good shape. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of 2018. Like, this roster is even better than it was last year.
Well, I think they were older though in 2018, and they had more guys coming off big injuries in 2018. I think the big issue, if you want to find one, is injury luck. They had a lot of injury luck last year, and you can't count on that this year. I don't know.
100%.
So that's the biggest. The schedule's harder, but you got to beat good teams, right? But the injury luck, and you never know how that materializes. Teams come up, teams come down, but the injury luck is the big concern. The one thing when you went like position by position is they could be better at quarterback next year, right? Like Jalen can get better,
sure,
and they can be better at receiver. Like Devontae could get better, and AJ could get better. They have.
Yeah, I think the counter to what I said is that what really matters is the offense, and their offense should be just as good, if not better, than it was last year because they have like the core of the offense is young. Those guys should be improving. If they don't get injured, they should be in good shape. They should have an elite offense. That's what matters the most. And if you are like, maybe that's the big picture complaint about the draft, if you wanted one, is that what really matters is offense. And did they materially change their upside on offense that much this weekend? Like DeAndre Swift, yeah. Tyler Steen, okay. But other than that, I don't know.
I'm just
spitballing.
So like I spent some time. I haven't said this on the pod, but I spent some time in February, like thinking a lot about the season. Kind of self-correcting in terms of my analysis of the team. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? You don't think like I think about thinking all the time, right? When you're in the shower, when you're walking, when you're in bed, like, aren't you thinking about things? Like, I'm always thinking. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's literally how brains work, but
yeah. So yeah.
I'm trying to think about other things most of the time.
So anyways, one thing that I thought about is I put too much into regression, the inevitable regression, and not enough into progression. So I always acknowledge, like, yeah, this guy's getting older. He's not going to be as good as he was last year. But the flip side is to that is like Josh Sweat gets better, and Devontae Smith gets better, and TJ Edwards gets better, and you go on down the list. Like we focus so much, on Lane Johnson, on these blue chip guys. Are they going to start to fall off? The other thing is, like, Devontae Smith's entering year 3. He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. He could be even better next year.
Absolutely.
Josh Sweat's entering his age 26 season. I mean, we can keep going here on.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
They have. Like Jordan Davis he could turn into the guy that they thought. Milton Williams could emerge. Landon Dickerson might become like one of the top guards in the like. There's so many things you can look at. Maybe Jordan Mailata is better this year than he was last year. So I think every time
maybe the defensive coordinator is better than it was last year.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many things that Nick Sirianni can be a better coach this year, right? There's so many things that you can account for on the flip side as well.
I think that's a good point. That's fair. Okay. All right. Wow. That was a long one, huh? Sorry, Marissa.
No, it was good.
How's the ball?
It's good. I'm much better than sitting on my chair. I did have to go grab my water because I wasn't thinking and I forgot it outside the room. But I had to have my matching Stanley with Zach.
Got his bathtub that he's drinking from there with a handle.
We both got the same. Well, his is actually better than mine. His is a handle, but mine is pink. So I do think mine's better because of that. But yeah, no, I thought it was a great pod. You guys hit on so many things. I mean, what more can the sickos ask for? 3 draft pods.
More P-Talk probably.
Yeah, maybe more P-Talk, but full breakdowns on each player that they drafted, and overall views. I think this weekend has been awesome. So huge credit to you guys.
Appreciate it.
No one does it like you.
Thank you, Marissa.
So, yeah.
Do you put the seat down at home, Zach?
Do I put it down at home?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
But yeah, I do. Yeah.
Would you say it's fair to say you're less concerned about those germs?
Very
I'll
much
touch
so,
the flusher
yes.
at home. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a
Definitely.
clean. We keep it clean here.
Oh.
What?
All right. That's
Yeah.
fine. Okay. I got nothing else.
Real quick, I want to wish best of luck to Rachel tomorrow at the Broad Street Run.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
This pod needs more Rachel talk. We need
Yes.
to. That's a goal going forward.
Yeah, got the
agree.
10 miles coming up.
Yeah.
I did.
Is she ready? Did she have pasta tonight? Like,
she had some pasta. Yep. Well,
Good.
with the kids, they did a little pasta party while I was at the facility.
do the kids have a sign?
No, but we'll probably make one in the morning.
Yes, you definitely should.
Are you
Like,
a finish
go
line? Are you a finish
No,
line?
we're gonna
or
go.
along
We're
Broad
gonna go.
Street?
We're gonna
Okay.
go towards the. I don't know. Towards the later end, but not the finish. We're not going all the way to the Navy Yard.
Gotcha.
Let's not be crazy.
So okay. Yeah, and we ran it one time, and I tried
I ran it
doing
once.
Yeah. How'd you do?
Rachel has run it several times. I ran it, and immediately the first thing I said when I caught up with Rachel at the finish line was, "I'm never doing that again." I hate it. It was terrible. The last 3 miles were awful. Not for me.
I finished first. I finished first one time in the Broad Street Run. Do you know that?
Let's hear.
Do tell.
Yeah, I mean,
I was covering her for the Athletic, and I was in the pace car.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I'm sorry, not the Athletic. I was covering for the Inquirer, and I was in the pace car in the front, and so it was like me and the official for the race, and Broad Street's wide open. There's all these people on all the sides, and I'm like snapping
Go,
pictures.
Zach, go.
No.
Zach,
Go. Yeah, it was a fun event to cover. But yeah, I was in the car. I was not like on the street or anything. Yeah, the pace car's in the front. So yeah, I had to cover the New York. I had to cover the New York Marathon one time, and when I was at the Start Ledger, and you do that from a hotel in, I think it's Columbus Circle, and you're like 52 stories up, and you're like watching the race from up there in the media room. Then they bring the winners up. That's far more of like a competition, the New York Marathon. Yeah.
What's the longest you've ever run non-valet division?
Honest, like I'm not like a distance runner. When back when I played in baseball, we had to run perimeters like of all the fields, and we had like certain conditioning days when we had to do that. So that was probably like the longest continuous run. And then I've had days when I'm playing basketball, my team's winning, not because of me, but so like
but that doesn't. I'm asking about as running.
I ran cross country in high school.
I get so bored.
I
didn't get bored.
I liked it. It was fun. I mean, it's definitely like, I don't know, I'm not in that shape anymore, clearly, but I don't know. I mean, like it's interesting. It's more, it's like an individual sport, you know?
Right.
I mean, obviously there's team aspects to it too.
You against yourself. How far can you push the bar?
Yeah. Well, I'd have my mother who won a state championship as a track coach in high school.
So she knows.
She'd be on this, like, I'd be running and it'd be like mile 2 and I'm like, oh, I'm getting tired. And she's like, pick up the pace, you know, running alongside of me. So very, very motivating, but also like, oh my gosh, I need to get away from you.
The day I ran the Broad Street run was the day we killed Bin Laden.
Oh, really? That was I think that was
it was a Sunday night. It was a Sunday night Mets Phillies game. I ran the Broad Street run, and then we were living in Manayunk. We went to go drive to the game, and all of a sudden, as we were driving, I had to throw up because my body was revolting against having run the Broad Street run. So I threw up all over myself on the drive to the game. Changed clothes. I don't know what change of clothes I had. And then we were in the stands for that Phillies Mets Sunday night baseball game. And I had a buddy, cool. and there was a news that Obama was going to speak. And I texted my buddy, like, what happened? Did we kill Bin Laden or something? He's like, how did you know? So wow. I found out about a little bit after The Rock did.
I wrote a story on that in college, like the coverage and how like news spread, and that I used that game as like one of part of my story.
Big USA chant.
Yeah.
I was it was 2011. It was draft weekend. I was covering the New York Giants at the time, and I was doing my draft grades for all like 32 teams. And that's when I found out. The correspondence dinner was the night before.
What did you give the Bin Laden kill?
I think today
B+. Could have got him earlier.
I was very happy, right? But yeah, so that was I remember that. I remember going to sleep the night before watching the correspondence dinner. I was exhausted. I was exhausted. The Giants had drafted Prince Mukamara in the first round that year. Yep.
I was in high school when it actually happened, but I remember a friend called me and woke me up, and then I woke my parents up.
We were probably living right near each other. I was in Hoboken at the time. Yeah.
Zach, you could have called me and woke me up.
I was on 2nd and Madison in Hoboken.
Crazy.
There you go. All right.
I did not think this pod would go there tonight.
No, neither did I.
We needed to get one last non-Eagles thing in, so I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad we.
That was a good one.
Diverted. Okay, that'll do it for this episode of Birds with Friends. We'll talk to you probably during training camp. That's about it.
We'll talk to you with the Punalytics guys this week.
That's about it.
Yeah, the Punalytics guys.
We got the Punalytics guys this week. Zach's going to take that day off. He doesn't want to. He doesn't think they deserve his presence. And then we'll probably do one goodbye show for Marissa, and then that'll be it before training camp. So
no. We got a lot this week. First off, 2 weeks from now, I assume 2 weeks. It hasn't been announced yet, but we'll have the schedule.
Kaboli reported the 11th.
Well, that wasn't. Is that not?
Oh. I thought, Marissa, when you said it, that he had reported it.
That was in a private Slack channel, but
yeah. Hopefully no one understands. All right.
The schedule's coming out soon. We all know.
Yes.
That's what
Mike North said on a Mike North from the NFL said on a podcast. This is second week in May. 2 weeks.
And it's usually a Thursday night. So if you are, whip out your calendar.
Yes. I gotta be very careful when I said it, but when I said it, Bo, on text or Slack, it could just end up on the show. Yes.
I thought that he had tweeted it.
No, he definitely did not. So we'll have the schedule release show coming up soon, and that's always a fun one. And
how many late night pods are there going to be?
6. 6, because they have a maximum 6 postseason games, and the Eagles are going to have, I assume, the max. So,
wow, Eagles and Jets. I will be on maternity leave for them, but I will be tuning in. I'll probably be listening live at 3 a.m.
Just hopefully not the Browns. So Michael can come. Michael can be home, and
yeah.
help feed the baby. So
yeah, rolling my eyes at that one.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of Birds with Friends. Quite a weekend for the Eagles. Quite a weekend for Zach. We will talk to you later this week. For Zach and Marissa and the Sickos and SEAL Team 6, I'm Bo. We thank you for listening. We will talk to you later this week. Got to reach out to the Puntalytics guys. And as always, we love you.